Welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of Brain Health Matters, a podcast dedicated to helping you connect with the people and resources that will help you improve your memory, boost your brain, and reduce the risk of developing dementia. I'm your host, Kate Kunkel, and I want to thank you for joining me here on Brain Health Matters for these last 2 years. I'm going to be taking a hiatus right now. I thought that I would be able to produce the show every 2 weeks and continue my coaching practice along with writing the next couple of books, but it's just a little bit too much. So I'm going to take a break for a few months. When I come back, we'll continue with the amazing lineup of guests. In the meantime, go back and listen to the previous episodes because we have so much information that will help you improve your brain. In the meantime, listen to our episode this week because we're joined by Rena Yudkowsky. She is the memory expert, and she's going to be sharing amazing tips that you can use right now to improve your memory. See you in a moment.
Brain Health Matters is brought to you by The Musical Brain, Book 3 in the Healthy Brain series. Enjoy the fun and easy practices in this book to improve your memory, sharpen focus, and master your mind with the healing power of music. Available on Amazon everywhere.
Hello and welcome to Brain Health Matters. I'm your host, Kate Kunkel, and this week I'm joined by my great friend, Rena Yudkowsky. Rena is a professional memory coach, geriatric social worker, and the founder of Memory Matters. Rena teaches online memory improvement courses to midlifers and seniors. She is passionate about her mission of helping those 50 and over to age more healthfully, both physically and cognitively. Welcome, Rena. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kate. It's so much fun to be back with you. We love to do things together.
Yes, it's great. We'd had a great memory webinar a year or so ago, and it was just so much fun.
Yes.
So I'm excited to have you share how memory works to start. Can you give us a brief overview?
Sure. Really, memory is a very complicated process. And I don't think we 100% understand the entire mechanism of it. So let's just boil it down to some very simple steps that we can understand that help us understand why we need to use certain techniques. And when things get hard, when recall gets hard, why certain things are going to help us. So a real quick overview of how memory works. Again, I'm simplifying this so that we can understand this. I'm not a neurologist or a brain scientist. Okay, but quick overview. So first, we take things into our sensory memory. Our sensory memory is what we see or hear or smell or taste through our senses. And then so lots of things come our way, right? We see so many things a day. We hear so many things. Not all of that gets transferred onto the next step, which is short-term or working memory. Because if all that did, we would be so overwhelmed. That's sensory overstimulation. So at every point, this is the really cool part about our brains. At every point of the process, there's a little like garbage can. Like imagine a little garbage can or a little filter saying, you don't need this. We don't need to remember this. It's gone. And that's an automatic process so that we don't have to remember things that we don't need. And once we remember things, but then we don't need that anymore, then it gets filtered out. So I think that's very cool. So sensory memory is what we see here comes into us. If we don't pay any attention to it, don't need it, it's gone. But if we give it a little attention or you want to notice it or you want to remember it, then it goes into short-term memory or working memory. Now, some models of memory make a differentiation between short-term memory and working memory, and some don't. So it depends what you're looking at as to how you define those two. But basically, the short-term memory is what you can hold in your brain for 7 seconds. So think about, you go to look up a number in a phone book or in your phone, let's say your phone, then let's say you have to go dial it somewhere else. Before we had the smartphones, we could just press the button. But you looked up, remember the days when you looked up a number in the phone book? You would say it out loud a few times, go to the phone, dial it, close the phone book and forget, right? Because it wasn't something you needed in your long-term memory. So again, you could hold it there for a couple seconds, but you don't need it for long-term.
I do that a lot.
Yeah.
Very short term.
Exactly. Like you just repeat the name or the number over just so you need it. And then when you don't need it anymore, it's gone.
Yeah.
But what if you really want something to be there in long-term memory so you can recall it? The long-term memory is our memory bank. It's our storage. It's all our memories that are there. for many, many, many years. So what if you want something to be there? How do we help it get from short-term memory to long-term memory? Now, a lot of this, most of this happens automatically, but when we get older and we feel hardships or memory lapses or what we call senior moments, then we have to work a little harder. We have to pay a little more attention. We have to be a little more conscious about making this process happen. So what helps get it from short-term to long-term memory so that then we could recall it? That's where all the techniques come in. The paying close attention, active observation, like really, really looking carefully at what you're trying to remember, really noticing the details, analyzing the information you want to remember, and using the techniques, association, turning it into a picture, making it meaningful, all the different techniques that we teach. So that is going to help you to get it from short-term memory to long-term memory where it can stay. That process is called encoding. You encode a memory. And when you do certain things, that memory is encoded better or more deeply. When it's encoded deeply, you can pull it out when you want it. So this is the clue. You meet a new person. She says her name. It goes in one ear and out the other.
Boy, I am so bad with that, Rena. I know that I should pay more attention, but it is a hard thing for me. I don't know why. Maybe because sometimes I feel like you just said you have to decide, it's not maybe a conscious decision, but do I need to know this long term? Because if I know I'm just meeting someone at a party and I'm not likely to ever see them again or on the street, do I need to remember that? But I might need to remember that. So here, this is how you help people, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about names for a minute. You meet someone and you might not even hear their name. Like if I say, hi, Kate, my name's I just mumbled my name. You didn't even hear it. You can't say to me later, you forgot it. You didn't even hear it. So you got to hear it. You got to care enough to want to remember it. So some people go to a party, they say, I'm bad at names and I don't need to remember anyone's names. But if you do that, you have a very small chance of remembering anyone's names. But if you go to a party and say, I really care to remember new people's names and I'm going to try hard, that's very different than saying I'm bad at names. We need to stop saying we're bad at names, because when you say you're bad at names, your brain believes that thought. And then you have a very small chance of remembering the next name of the person you meet.
Intention.
Yes, intention and what you say to yourself, self-talk. Just like in every other area of your life, you need to convince yourself or be positive and have positive thoughts and say positive things to yourself, whether it has to do with weight loss or what you're eating or your business and how you succeed. Memory is the same thing. So if you come and say, oh, I'm never going to remember your name, Rena. Well, I'm never going to remember your name. I'm not even going to try. I'm going to be like, if you don't try and you don't care to try, then I can't really help you. But when I go to a party, it is very important to me to remember names because I want to remember people's names because it's important to them. People love the sound of their name. It's the sweetest sound to them. So, and you can make someone feel like $1 million by remembering their name. People love it when you know their name. It means you care about them. So you're going to stop saying you're bad at names. You're going to care enough to remember it. And then when they say their name, you are going to really pay attention to it. So that means I am looking you in the eye. I'm not looking around. I'm not talking on my phone. I'm not talking to my child or grandchild who's standing next to me. I'm really focused on when you say your name. And if I didn't hear it the first time, I'm going to say, no, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat that? Or I really want to remember your name. Say it again, loud and clear so I can get it. And again, you don't have to be embarrassed to do that. People are going to be so happy that you care enough to remember their name. So you got to hear it. Then you comment on it. If it's a different name, or if you don't know how to spell it, or if you have a sister whose name that is, or if it's a special name to you, comment on it. What does all this do? You're paying more attention to the process. And that is what I was just saying before about getting it from short-term to long-term memory. Paying attention, doing everything I'm going to tell you now is what's going to help that process happen more easily. It's going to help you encode the memory into long-term memory. So later that day or 2 days later, when you say, what was that, her name? Oh yeah, I got it. It was the same name as my sister-in-law, or it means this, or she spelled it interestingly. And because it's there, it's encoded properly, and then you could recall it. So you're going to hear the name, you're going to comment on it. You're going to make sure you're going to make sure you hear it. You're going to focus carefully. You're going to be present when they're saying the name. And then here's a helpful tip before going into anything fancy. You're going to repeat the name back to them a few times. So it's, hi, Kate. It's so nice to meet you. Kate, where do you live? You live in Ecuador, right?
Yeah, that's a good way
Kate.
to do it. Yeah, to make
So I just
comments.
said, Kate, you live in Ecuador. I just said your name 3 times at least. So what does that do? I'm hearing myself say your name. So again, that sensory impression. I just heard your name 3 times. I heard myself say it 3 times. So my auditory senses are perked, right? So I'm using my sense of auditory to hear your name at least 3 or 4 times in the conversation. And you can just, as you're talking to someone, you repeat it back to them. And when you say goodbye, you say, goodbye, Kate. It's so nice to meet you. So you're saying the name a few times. That really helps get it in there, encode it properly. That alone is going to be helpful. Paying attention to the name, hearing it properly, repeating it back to the person, commenting on it. The person might even tell you something interesting about themselves, where they're from, what they do, whether they like kittens or dogs, and you can connect that to their name. So after that piece of what I just said, then there's some fancier techniques where you associate the name to the face, you make it meaningful. Meaning, when I say my name is Rena, that doesn't mean anything to you. You might not have even heard the name before, right? I spell it Rena. But when I tell you what my name means, now it's going to have meaning, and you're going to remember it. So my name means joy. It's Hebrew. Rena means joy. So I'm also going to do a little action here for those of you that could see this video. If you're not listening, I'm going to jump for joy. Rena's jumping for joy. Okay, take this picture, jumping for joy. So that little meaning, giving it a little picture associated to it, that already is going to help it stick in your brain better. It's going to help you encode it better, because now it has meaning. Now it's not a name you never heard. I told you Rena means joy, and I'm jumping for joy because I'm so happy to be with you.
So that's interesting. You said that about giving the meaning of the name. For someone like myself who might be trying to expose my business to others at a networking event, somebody's at a networking event, and you meet people and you know that people aren't going to, well, you figure that people aren't going to remember your name. But if you take the other side of this to help other people remember, then that's another step that you can use. Now that you know how memory works, you can use that to your advantage when you need to be remembered.
Absolutely. You make yourself memorable to others. Exactly. So you say, hi, I'm Kate Kunkel. And let's see, what are we going to do with that? We're going to say,
I live in Ecuador. I love kittens.
You love kittens. So Kate Kunkel, KK, and kittens with a K. It's all the Ks. So triple K, Kate Kunkel, kittens. That's it. Triple K is how we're going to remember you. Kate Kunkel, kittens. And you love kittens. I know you post pictures of your kittens all the time. So Kate Kunkel, kittens. Triple K is all I have to remember your name. You just made yourself memorable to me. Right. Now you can do that. We could also do stuff with Kunkel. That's an interesting name. You also call yourself Brain Health Matters. We could try to connect that somehow. You can play around with it. Be creative. The point is you make it meaningful, because once it means something to you, you can remember it. And yes, for sure, make yourself memorable to other people. Tell them something about you that's going to help them remember you, because that's very valuable.
Yeah, so, you're helping out other people's memory. And also, exactly. I think by doing that, you might be training your own brain then to use those things. By helping make yourself more memorable, you're going to pay attention to things that other people say.
Exactly. I'll give you another good example. I have a friend. Her name is Sima Gordon. And whenever I introduce Sima, Sima stands there, I say, this is my friend Sima Gordon. See my garden. See my garden. Sima Gordon. See my garden. And people love that. They laugh, and then when they see us next, they point to her and say, see my garden. It's like just comes to you because it's memorable. Because what are you doing? You're giving it attention. It takes a few seconds to do that. A few seconds of attention and focus and intention, right? Your intention is to remember this name. So you're giving it attention because your intention is to remember it. Intention, attention, focus, and just a little meaning. When you have all that, it goes into the long-term memory so much more easily. And if it's encoded properly, then you could pull it out properly. Think of a file cabinet. When you want to find a piece of paper, you got to put it in the right folder. If you file it in the wrong folder, it's there, but it's not accessible. You can't find it because it's not in the right folder. Same thing with our memories. Our memories, think of your brain as a file cabinet. And so you might say, oh, but I heard her name. She said her name, but I can't remember it. That's because it's not filed in the right folder. So what helps you file it in the right folder for recall, so you can recall it, right? Think of picking up that paper out of the folder as recall. You want to remember that name. You got to pull it out of the right folder. What helps you do that is encoding it properly, using your senses, paying attention to it, associating it, analyzing it, active observation. So when you're telling me your name, Kate, I'm going to look at your face and I'm going to see what is it? What outstanding feature is it? Some people have a big nose. Some people have a pretty smile. Some people have, deep eyes, dark eyes, high cheekbones. So many features you can notice about a person. And when you are actively observing their face, that's going to stick in your mind. Now, of course, there is more of a technique of,
Sure.
The next step of the technique, which I teach in my master class on names. But this alone is going to be helpful because when you use your senses to encode the memory, so using your senses by repeating the name out loud and making sure that you're really looking at the person. So you're using your sense of vision, right? And your sense of hearing. The more senses you use to encode the memory, the deeper it's there. So for example, if you use one sense to remember something, you might have about a 10% chance of remembering a week later. But if you use 4 senses to encode a memory, you have a 97% chance of remembering it.
Wow, that's
Look
awesome.
what we did. We just went from 10%. Okay, these are like approximate numbers, but
Right, sure.
let's say from 10% to 97% chance of remembering it by doing what? By using 4 more senses, 4 senses.
Right.
So I'll give a quick example of how you could do this in daily life. This is a very, very typical example. A lot of people, when they lock their door, they then can't remember if they locked their door, whether it's at night or during the day. And it bothers people. People get very anxious because they can't remember if they locked their door or not, whether they're in their house or they left their house. So it causes a lot of anxiety and stress because people doubt themselves. Did I lock my door? Did I not lock my door?
Did I turn off the iron?
Turning off the stove, the iron, taking your medicines. These are all examples that you can use this, what I'm going to teach you now. So locking the door. So instead of just talking on your phone as you leave your house and your hand is putting the key in the lock and turning it, but your brain is on the phone doing something else. So there's no connection between your brain and your hand. There's no way you're going to remember that. So you got to get off your phone when you're doing tasks that you want to remember. So that's important. I do a whole thing on multitasking also. Multitasking trips up our brain. Anyway, so instead, what are we going to do now? Now I'm going to look at my hand turning the key in the lock. I'm going to feel the key. This takes 2 seconds, okay? I'm walking you through every step, but really it takes 2 seconds. I'm feeling the key. I'm watching my hand turn the lock. I'm hearing the click of the lock and the door slamming. And then before I walk away, I say, I have now locked my door. I have now locked my door. So I'm watching my hand. I'm using the sense of seeing. I'm feeling the key. That's tactile. I'm hearing the click of the lock, and I'm hearing myself say out loud, I have now locked the door. All those things, which take just a few seconds to remember to do, what are you doing? You're giving it your full attention. You're being mindful. You're bringing your brain into the process of remembering. This is crucial because usually where's our brain?
Everywhere else.
Anywhere else, thinking about 100 other thoughts. They say we have about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah.
Well, then, yeah, of course I can't remember things because my brain is thinking so many thoughts, right? So you got to bring your attention to the task you're doing. And I know that sounds simple, but it's very, very, very important. And when you do that, you'll find that you can remember the task you're doing much better.
Rena, I have to stop you here because you taught this when we did our thing together. Since then, I have used it every day. When I put my glasses down, I say out loud, I just put my glasses down wherever it was that I put them down. And then I will walk away and sometimes I'll look back and that's another confirmation so that when I come back to that place, I've got my glasses there. I do this with my keys all the time too, because I was notorious for losing keys. I don't lose my keys anymore. I see where they are. So I have to say, folks, that Rena knows of what she speaks here because it has helped me tremendously. I don't lose my glasses. If I didn't happen to bring them into the house with me, I have my office outside, then I have another pair there, so I don't have to go back. But I remember that I left them here or that I brought them in the house. And that is because I consciously do that. And you're right, Rena, it takes milliseconds, actually. I just have to pay attention because I was terrible at that before. So I really want to thank you for that.
I'm so happy it works for you. It works for everyone. I could tell you another story of a lady who she used to go upstairs every night to bed and she couldn't remember if she locked the door or not. And it used to plague her, like it drove her crazy. She would come back downstairs, check the door, go back upstairs. Taught her this technique. Now she said to me, "Thank you so much. I never have to go back downstairs to check whether the door is locked." It has saved her so much self-doubt and anxiety. And that self-doubt, wears us down. It wears us down. It makes us not confident in our memory. So one of the greatest gifts I feel like I give people with all the different techniques, and I have 20 hours of content that I speak about, is the gift of confidence. Because if you can believe in your memory, you can age more healthfully. You can be sharper for longer. You can function better. You can function more independently. And ultimately, that is the goal of what we want to do. We want to stay independent for many, many years to come. And we do that. In order to do that, we have to believe in our memory. Our memory is ourselves. It's our identity. And we're all scared. There's a tremendous fear of dementia out there. And you've been through this yourself with your mom. So it's a real fear. And many, many people, it's one of the biggest fears of aging is getting dementia. But if you can be confident in your memory because you have the right tools and techniques to put into place, then you don't have to spend all that time worrying.
Yeah, because worrying is so bad for you on so many levels, physically, emotionally, mentally. Yeah, when we focus too much on concern, stress, then it really does affect everything in our lives. Like you said about even remembering to eat a good diet, to being able to make those choices. You mentioned something in passing, focus. That seems to be another thing people really have trouble with, partly because of our crazy connected lives. Do you have any even just short little tips you could give us on focus?
Sure. Yes. I mentioned before, but let's talk for another minute about this, which is multitasking. We are all so used to doing many things at once. So you might be, checking 3 different windows on your computer. You might be talking to someone on your phone and trying to drive, which is extremely dangerous, extremely, extremely dangerous. There's a reason that there's such a hefty fine for that. It's dangerous. Your brain can't do it. So we have this myth that, oh, I'm so capable. I can do 5 things at once. But what am I doing to my brain? I am tripping up my brain. And then I'm going to tell you, oh, Kate, I forgot to do that. That's because I was trying to do 4 other things at the same time. So I didn't forget. I tripped up my brain by multitasking. We have to slow it down a little. We have to slow it down, especially as we get older. This is something that changes as we get older. It becomes more difficult to pay attention to more than one thing at a time. But even when we're younger, we shouldn't be multitasking. It's just a myth, and it's a product of our busy, fast-paced lives with all the digital technology, which has pluses, but it also has minuses. And this is one of the minuses, is that our brain really can't do 2 things at once. So if you're talking on the phone and trying to remember my name when you meet me, no way, you can't do that.
No.
So we have to stop the multitasking. I mean, I have tons of stories, like people that are talking to me while they're baking a cake. And then they say, oh, Rena, I don't know if I put in the salt or not. What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. Your brain cannot carry on a conversation and bake at the same time. You think you can, you pretend you can, but you really can't. Now, when we're younger, maybe we get away with it for a while. But then when you start to have memory issues, the very first thing I want you to think about when you have memory issues is, am I really paying attention to this in the first place? And oftentimes you'll realize you're not really paying attention. And when you stop multitasking, really use your senses, really pay attention to what you're doing, being very mindful, bringing your whole brain to that, what you're doing, you're going to find your memory's going to improve, quote unquote. It's not really improving. It's just that you're actually paying attention to what you then want to remember. Because remember, we said attention is one of the things that's going to get it from that short-term memory to long-term memory. It's a technique. Even though you don't think about it like that, it is. The mindfulness, there's such a focus on mindfulness today, whether it's meditation and yoga and breathing, all those things that help us feel more present and more mindful. We feel calmer, we feel more centered, and it helps our brain focus on one task at a time. So I often tell people to help them be more mindful when they start to forget something or when they have a memory loss or lapse. The first thing you do, and I've said this before, is take a deep breath, because our brain needs oxygen. Our brain needs oxygen to recall. So the very first thing you do is you take a deep breath and then another one and then another one if you need. Deep cleansing breaths, because our brain needs to be centered, focused, and most active. In order to get it active, we need oxygen. And it needs to be active in order to remember everything we want to remember. So yeah, when we're talking about focus, you got to stop the multitasking. You got to engage your senses to help you, and they really do work, like you said before. And you also want to, part of being mindful is not to do things automatically. Sometimes we're on automatic pilot. We walk into our house, we throw the keys down, we throw our pocketbook down, and then 2 hours later, we're like, where are my keys? Well, it's because you did it automatically. You weren't even paying attention to what you were doing.
It's like eating. A lot of people just shovel it in. They're not even paying attention. One of the things I teach in my Tune Up Your Brain course is to eat mindfully, to get in the practice of doing that, because firstly, you're not going to be eating so much because you're going to be paying attention. Your stomach's going to have a chance to realize that you've got food in it, but also you enjoy it more. You get much more nutrition out of it because you've enjoyed it and you've paid attention to it. So like you said, mindfully doing anything or automatically doing anything, you're not going to get as much out of it.
Exactly. So those are just some tips, daily practical tips that are just helpful to really encode that memory properly and focus on what you're doing. It also helps you feel less stressed. When you multitask, you feel stressed, and then you're less creative. Actually, this is an interesting statistic. When you multitask, it temporarily lowers your IQ by 15 points. Temporarily lowers your IQ by 15 points. So we want to stop the multitasking. When we're distracted like that and trying to focus on so many things at once, we're actually not focusing on anything.
I've heard so many people say, "Oh, I can multitask. I can do this. I can do that." And I'm like, and I always say, because of my background, you can't. Your brain can't. It can sequentially go from one thing to another very quickly, but it cannot do more than one thing at once. We're not a Windows operating system where we can have 16 tabs open and doing 16 different things simultaneously. We can only do one thing at once. Rena, your information and your guidance is so awesome. How can people work with you to improve their memories in a big way?
Thank you. So I actually have several different programs. I have my full course, which I hope to launch again soon. So just get on my email list, send me an email, rena@renayudkowsky.com, or go to my website, renayudkowsky.com, and join the email list, and then you'll know about everything coming up. So my full course is 14 sessions. I also have a membership called Remembership. That's a 3-month membership. That's really fun. And those are short videos. You can watch them anytime. I also have a very fun thing once a month going on Mondays. Once a month on Monday, it's called Monday Memory Motivation. So MMM. And we just hop on for 45 minutes and do brain exercises together. And that's really fun. It's no commitment. You can decide the day before or that day that you want to join me. It's called Monday Memory Motivation. Information about that and membership and my course will all be on my website.
And I'll make sure that is on the show notes. Yes. I love that alliteration too, the MMM. That's really important for remembering things as well.
Exactly.
Rena, as always, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your knowledge here on Brain Health Matters.
My pleasure. I really hope that people age happily and healthfully. And Kate, good luck with all your work. You're doing incredible work.
Thanks. See you later. Be sure to subscribe to Brain Health Matters on YouTube or your favorite podcast service to ensure that you get all of the latest episodes as they're released, because every time we share important information that could change your life or the life of a loved one.
You have 86 billion reasons to go vegan, and they're all resting right between your ears. That's right, 86 billion neurons that make up the master controller we call our brains. And while they're in control, our lifestyle choices determine how well they work, and that means we must nurture and protect them. The best way to do that? With a whole foods vegan diet that nurtures not just the physical, but also the emotional, mental, and spiritual brain. In the vegan brain, you'll learn how whole plant foods can nurture the healthiest version of yourself, and, perhaps more importantly, how your choices can reduce suffering for countless animals and help create a more compassionate, sustainable world. The Vegan Brain Second Edition also includes nutritious recipes and meal plans so that your journey towards a kinder, healthier future will be easy and delicious. Pre-order your copy now for delivery July 7th, available in ebook format on Amazon.